Good morning, social media breakfast. How are you today? I'm so excited to be here today with Special Agent Steve Lupo from the FBI Houston, and we are going to be talking about how to protect your business from online events and crime and all kinds of things. So we had a great conversation ahead of this to kind of talk through what we're going to talk to you about, but it is Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and we thought it was a really great time to talk about this because it is becoming more and more important for smaller businesses to manage, and all businesses really, but even smaller businesses to manage their online risk profile. And social media plays a big part of that. Isn't that true, Steve?
That's very true.
Yeah. So we're going to be talking about that today, and we are going to take your questions. So definitely start to let me know you're here in the comments. Let us know where you're at and where you're watching, because I know this is streamed across multiple platforms. So let us know where you're watching from, and we will get just right into the heart of this. So really navigating an online business these days is not that easy because there's a lot more little components that you have to worry about. I guess I remember, Steve, when I first started working, we weren't even connected to like external email yet. I know I'm kind of dating myself a little bit. I was the young, person in the office that like, we have to have external email, so funny now to even think that was a thing, right?
Sure.
So, but today we have social media, we have email, we have all kinds of different threats in some ways. And also, I mean, they're great things for our businesses to grow and to connect with our online audiences. And the people that watch this are people from that run social media for their brands usually, or their own brand or for another brand. So I really wanted to bring you in to talk about this because I really feel like that this is something we don't pay enough attention to. So thank you for coming.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So I'm going to talk about you a little bit. I'm going to pull up your little bio here. Special Agent Stephen Lupo, he served in the FBI for 18 years, so you've seen it all, right? In counterterrorism, counterintelligence, and cyber, which is what we're talking about today. So he currently serves on the Houston Cyber Task Force and on the FBI's SWAT team, which, he might be running into a building soon where you are. So take a picture. So that's cool. And so you've been doing this for a really long time, right?
I have. Before I was in the FBI, I was a police officer and a detective for about 14 years. So I've had local experience and federal experience now.
What made you interested in the cyber area of this in law enforcement?
Well, starting, almost in the late 90s, it turned out that cyber was involved in almost every offense and almost every crime in some way or another. This is the wave of the future. I like to say that, the good thing about the internet is it connects us to everyone in the world. Mm-hmm. And the bad thing about the internet is it connects us to everyone in the world. Yeah, so, we see for as many positive, good outreach as we have, there's so many more ways that a bad guy can connect with us. And this is really the wave of the future. I think almost all crime is going to have some sort of cyber nexus, either in the commission of the crime or in helping solve the crime.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about that a little bit beforehand about just the chatter that's out there and sort of the ways that different people give themselves up online from the criminal side of things, which I thought was really interesting. We're going to jump into the business side, but I do think that that's a really important thing to understand is that this particular platform can be used as a tool by both the good side and the bad side, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, cool. So how does the FBI fit into all of this cyber, security and stuff like that?
Sure. So we have our cyber division and headquarters and our cyber units out in the field offices. We have 56 field offices, and each of them have units that investigate cyber crime. And we kind of have a two-pronged approach. So we look at national security cyber crime, which is fighting cyber crime committed by nation state actors and foreign intelligence services. And then we have criminal units that focus on criminals that are doing cyber crime, which is the ones that impact businesses and everyday people more than the nation state actors would.
Right.
And the FBI here in Houston has a task force that looks into all those types of crimes.
Yeah, I think it's really important to understand that distinction between really, you were talking about the wave of the future is cyber and online issues, and that's also including warfare. I mean, that's becoming. I mean, I know you don't operate in that realm, but it's just really interesting to see that that's happening too. I mean, with all kinds of power plants going down and all of the things that are getting hacked, and so I think that's a really important thing to see. But then there's also just the regular old crime that's going on, right?
Yes. Yep. Regular old crime is a multi-billion-dollar business. And if you're in a certain industry, you may be the victim of a nation state actor trying to get your information. And people not in that business may think, okay, well, I don't care what the Chinese or the Russians try to do to me. They don't care what I do. But the cyber criminal, all they care about is, can they get money from you? And if they can, the only reason they haven't gotten to you yet is probably because of statistics. They will try at some point. If they can make money from you, someone will get an opportunity to try, for sure.
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I think people don't realize, I mean, they think about, I know we've all heard about companies having their systems locked out and then being blackmailed to give some money in order to let it go. But I don't know that many of us have really seen that as our problem. Do you know what I'm saying? So I just like to talk about that a little bit and sort of what they're looking for, because then we can talk about how to avoid it. I just want to talk about what the problem is, like a little bit first, because I think you said something like $5,000 to $10,000, like $5,000 to $10,000 crimes. So could you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So ransomware, basically what ransomware is someone gets into your computer either by hacking or by social engineering and getting you to click a link that it gets a malicious software on your computer. And what they do is they encrypt all your data. And the encryption key they have, and they will sell you that encryption key to unlock all your data for whatever price they deem you can pay. The ones that hit the news are always the 100 Bitcoin, $10 million ransoms, but really the $10,000, $5,000 crimes, they are sweeping the nation right now. They're hitting grocery store chains, insurance agencies, hospitals are being a big target right now because the bad guys know they'll pay because they need their systems. And they're not necessarily multi-million-dollar crimes. It is, how much can we get someone to pay to unlock their systems? There's a good story about a grocery chain, I believe it was in the South, that got hit with ransomware. And the IT guy negotiated a $10,000 payment. It was down from like $1 million. Now, the grocery chain had the ability to pay that amount of money, but the IT guy was able to convince the bad guys who were in another country that it was really just a small mom and pop store and they didn't have the money. And he bargained down a $10,000 payment because he thought he could, and he did. Those kinds of crimes are really exploding. Unfortunately, we don't have as good a numbers for ransomware as we would like, because so many people don't report it. So many companies do not want that information out there that they were the victims or they were targeted, and they will quietly pay and not report it. Now, that may be changing with some legislation, but that is a huge problem that we see at the FBI. And unfortunately, there's not a lot we can do about it. We don't have a way to unlock your computer if you're a victim of ransomware. Some of these encryption keys were built for the very purpose of keeping things secure. They're some of the same encryption that we use here in the FBI. We can't break it. We can't get you a key. And the only thing we can do is advise you on how to proceed and how to protect yourself in the future, which patching your systems and backing up your data are the biggest two things we can do.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. First, I do want to say though that I agree with you. I've heard some very small businesses and organizations being hacked like that. Some small clinics, doctors' clinics. That's really a problem because patient data gets locked up, and so of course they're desperate to make sure that patient data gets turned back on because it's like lives kind of hang in the balance in that case. But you talked about something, and I don't want to go past this until we talk about it. There's two things when the ransomware comes, and I want to talk about sort of how we get to this point. So you talked about clicking on links.
Yes.
And so I mean, I'm going to be honest with you, social media basically is all it is clicking on links all day long. So, can you kind of talk about what's happening with that and sort of, I mean, I don't think it's plausible or even possible to have people not click on links ever, because I think that's not going to happen in the social media realm. So, can you talk a little bit about that and maybe what we do?
Sure. So it's kind of a balance. Let's say you have a big company and you have lots of intellectual property or government contracts. You're going to almost mandate your people don't click on links, because the business that you're doing doesn't need someone to click on links. It doesn't, you're not selling products that are that you need someone to click and buy, or sending out specs that you need to click. You have known customers. So there's a big push for in bigger companies to make sure that you don't click on anything that doesn't come from someone that you know. For the smaller companies, for the one-man shops, for the people who rely on having to click links of emails people send them, our best advice is to back up your data offline. So connect a hard drive to your data, download it at night, unplug it, keep it off the internet, so that if you do click a link that ends up being malicious and your data is compromised, you don't have to talk to the ransomware guy at all. You can just wipe your system, reinstall your data, and start again, maybe with some better internet security. I will say that anecdotally, some of the things that we hear about ransomware is they have the best customer service of any to talk to, because a lot of people don't know how to use Bitcoin or how to pay in Bitcoin. And these criminals will actually walk you through the process of buying and sending Bitcoin much better than any of the customer service folks that you deal with on a regular basis, which is interesting. But prevention, if you can avoid clicking on links, that is absolutely crucial. If you can't, protect your data by backing it up, the best way that you can. Those are the two best things that we can advise people on how to stop ransomware, because the ransomware folks, the bad guys who hack into your computer and who use zero-day exploits or some kind of sophisticated hacking technique to get in your computer, they're probably not going after the mom and pop stores. They have bigger targets.
For now.
That certainly could change.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, you were talking about this before, Steve, too. It's like you got to know your own risk profile. Like, so if your computer, this was a great question we talked about beforehand. Ask yourself, what would I do if I lost everything on my computer today?
Yes.
What risk would that be to your business? Right. And so could you talk about that a little?
Sure. And that's a great way of putting it, is what happens if you turned on your computer today and you couldn't get into anything? How would that affect your business, your day-to-day life? And how would you mitigate that? What would you do if you knew tomorrow that you were going to turn on your computer and that would happen? What would you do today? And a lot of that is backing up your data and having a plan to pivot to another computer or another network or another provider. Something just that you can have in your back pocket. And the more you rely on a day-to-day operation, like if you can't be down for 48 hours, you have to plan ahead of time for it to happen, because it'll never happen at a good time and you'll never be ready for it completely. But the more ready you can be for it, the better you will fare if something like that does happen. And it's happened. People think, well, why would they come after me? There are small hospitals in the Midwest, in the middle of nowhere, have been hacked. In fact, recently on the media, it looked like we may have the first known case of someone dying because of a ransomware attack. There was a small child in a hospital who they say could not get the care needed because they could not get the data fast enough. Now, I'm not sure if that's been verified, but that is the first report I've heard about a death linked to ransomware.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's crazy. I'm also getting some questions. This is great, Nick, because this is a great question. He says, is a time machine on a Mac a good enough backup?
So, I'm not the technical expert on the best procedures for each different device. So what we usually tell people is if it's connected to your computer and connected to the internet, when the ransomware comes, it's probably vulnerable. So I don't know enough about the Mac system to know if that time machine is cloud-based and not connected. And even cloud-based things, if it's live, when the ransomware comes in, it's going to encrypt everything it can touch. And some ransomware is more effective than others. But if it's not plugged in, it can't get there. That is for sure.
Yeah, that's a good point, because you've got that moment. I mean, I kind of believe in redundancy, although I can't tell you I'm doing an aside, kind of unplugged in backup. I know that years and years ago, I had this thing that you'd plug into your computer and it would back everything up, and then you unplug it. It did it just automatically. I don't know if those exist anymore. I guess it's time to go look and see.
External drives are very, they have.
But if those fail, that's a problem too. So, but then, that's easy because you can just get a new one and back it up again.
So if your hard drive is plugged in when the ransomware comes, it's going to get that too. So having it unplugged and only plugging it in to do your backups is our best technological fix for that.
Exactly. If it's plugged in, it's at risk.
That is true.
And how do those people find like the networks? Do you know how that works? How they're probing for that?
Sure. There are a lot of very easy to use tools that are available online that anyone can use that are designed to find networks out in the wild and holes in networks especially. Now, these tools are usually designed for the good. They're designed for threat hunters, for someone to use the tool on their own network and determine what their vulnerabilities are and then fix those vulnerabilities. The problem is those tools are also available for bad guys to probe networks. If you are online, you've been probed. There isn't anyone online who hasn't been. Whether you've been attacked or not is a different story. And you just never know when it could happen to you. I will say that, if your business model, if you're posting on social media and you're putting out information and you don't really have a lot of stuff that's stored on your computer that you need to do your business, if ransomware comes, you can click it off, start over on another platform and just keep going, and it may not be an issue for you. So, ransomware really depends on that question that you posed earlier, is what happens if I can't access my computer today? How does that affect my business? That is a great way to think about it, because that's what will happen.
Yeah. So I also think, because we're talking about social media here, so let's kind of go down this rabbit hole a little bit. Part of it is also your actual social media accounts. So that happens a lot too. Those get hacked and people take over your account. They change the email address. They change. I mean, it happens in rapid succession, and you can't get in anymore. So, what would you recommend around that?
So, you really have to be up on what your service provider and what platform you're on has in terms of security. If you're on Facebook, you should know what to do ahead of time if someone takes over your account on Facebook. You should know who to contact, how to contact them, and always have
that one. By the way, it's not simple unless you have like an advertising account. So
that's right. It is not simple, and identity theft, which has been going on for a long time, being used with and without computers, has only exploded with the use of computers and social media. If someone were to take over, if you make your money off of your online persona and your online influencing, and someone, the other thing to think about is if someone were to take that over, how would that affect your bottom line, and how would you remedy that? And we like to say for the one-man social media influencer all the way to the 10,000 person company, have a plan ahead of time for what you're going to do if something like that happens. Even if it's just the phone number to call, and make sure that phone number still works. Even if it's how do I get with Facebook and Instagram and Twitter to make a complaint, and know the process at least ahead of time, so that if it does happen, you're not doing research on how to fix the problem. You've already done that research.
I just gave you our logo. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. And also one of the things you haven't mentioned, which I think is really important with social media, is two-factor authentication.
Yes.
So could you talk about a little bit about that? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Sure. Yeah. So two-factor authentication. Anyone who has an online bank account probably is very familiar. You log in with your password, and they have to send you a code that you have to then enter for them to prove it's you. It's not just the password logging in. It's another method of proof that you are who you say you are. When this first started, people were not really happy with it. They thought, why do I have to do this? I think as more people have become victims, we've become more used to kind of like, going through airport metal detectors was for a generation ago was a new thing. Now it's accepted and you know it. This is going to be the same for two-factor authentication. I think it's going to be pretty much done everywhere all the time. And I hope that becomes the case, because it is much harder to hack somebody if you have two-factor authentication. Not impossible, but much more difficult.
It would be hard because, I mean, you would have to have whatever the two-factor thing was under your control as well. You'd have to have all those things. So that's one of the things they can take from you also if they take your computer, because if they can lock you out of your computer and they have your data, they could technically probably log into all of your accounts if you didn't have two-factor authentication and change the passwords on because they have access to your logged in email.
Sure. And, if they have your device, that's another thing to think about. If your phone gets stolen, hopefully you have a method of someone can't just open it and use it, because if they're sending an SMS text message to your phone and someone else has your phone, that's a bad thing.
That's true. I mean, because I always laugh whenever, it does send me a message, like when I'm changing something, it says, did you do this? And I just did it on that same device. And I'm like, yes. So if somebody had that device, they'd be like, yes. Right. I thought about that. This wouldn't be good if somebody got a hold of your phone. So keep track of your phone, especially if you have it logged in. That's the other thing, on your phones. I mean, we all have screen, things on our phones to keep us. I have my fingerprint and my face print on my phone. My kids are always trying to put my phone in front of my face to try to turn it on. I'm like,
yes, that is a very effective way to quickly get into your phone, but it's not a very effective way for phone security.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're dead, can they put that in front of your face and turn your phone on?
So it's supposed to work with your eyes open, but I'll say, without getting graphic, I'll say there are ways around that.
Okay, well, I don't want to talk about that. Okay, good. We'll move on from that one. We're talking to the FBI here, so that could be really bad. Okay, so personal and corporate. Okay, so the other thing we talked about, so we've talked about backing up your data. We've talked about multi-factor authentication. Thank you, Christina, for that extra information. We've talked about social media links, and we've talked about ransomware, and we've talked about the amazing customer service of the bad guys. So, what are we going to do? Because I mean, social media is littered with links. I want to go back to the link thing because I'm not really sure how to fix this, but I know that there's some platforms where you can hover it over and see what the thing is. I don't know if that really helps. But the idea is that, I don't know, what about on your computer itself? It should have some sort of, firewall or something, right?
Sure. So, we always say patch your systems. So most of the malware that gets onto a computer is not some hacker who thought up a brilliant new way to get in that no one ever thought of. While that does happen, it's called the zero-day compromise. The most frequent way someone's computer is compromised is through malware that exploits a known vulnerability that has generally already been fixed. So Microsoft has a known vulnerability. They've realized someone could get in. They put out patches to patch your system so you could stop that vulnerability, and people don't do it. So then when the link comes in and you click it, you can click a malicious link if your system's been patched to prevent that malware, and it won't do anything. So patching your system and doing all the updates. Apple's a little bit better than Android on the phone side and on the computer side, because they push out their updates a little bit faster, and a lot of it's more automatic. But I'll guarantee you there's people out there who look at their phone or their computer before they go to sleep, and it says an update is requested, and they say, oh, do it later, do it tomorrow.
Well, and I think that's such a good point, because I mean, we're lazy, right? We don't want to like necessarily have that happen. So two things that just happened recently. Number one, Chrome just had an update like that. And they had a huge vulnerability. I don't know what it was, but they said you have to do this immediately, because apparently it was bad. So if you haven't updated Chrome lately and you use Chrome, do it now. Like not now, but like as soon as this is over, and don't click on any of the links. I don't know. In the meanwhile, the other thing was, you talked about Android. I'm an Android user. Just yesterday, I think it was, maybe day before, I got a notice from Android that said if you weren't up to a certain level you hadn't updated, that they were no longer going to support it. So I think they're starting to like try to really push on that too. I mean, it's crazy, because we've had the credit card problem for a very long time, going to the chips and all this stuff. And this is just like, I think the next iteration of that kind of fraud. You talked about social engineering though. So I want to talk, we kind of brushed right over that. Let's talk about that, because I think that's even more sinister than like some random link, like stranger danger. That's not what this is. So can you talk about that?
So social engineering runs the gamut from stranger danger all the way up to economic and traditional espionage. Social engineering and social media platforms that are used by social engineers is the absolute number one way to gather intelligence for everything that's being done nowadays. Intelligence services, our own intelligence services, criminal actors, people who do business email compromises, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. The way that people get information is social media. It used to be where they would call a company and say, try to find out who the purchasing person is at that company. And they'd take 15 or 20 phone calls before they finally narrowed down the right person. Now they just go online and they look. And not only do they find the purchasing person for XYZ company, but they get on their social media and they find out where they live, where their kids go to school, what they ate for dinner, when they're on vacation, sometimes when they're unreachable by phone, things that they can use to craft various kinds of criminal or counterintelligence attacks using social media. People always say, how much information does the FBI or the CIA have on your average citizen? And I would say Google has more information on your average citizen than we would ever hope to have in all the years of investigating we've ever done. And it's not because they're spying on you per se, it's because you're telling them. You're letting them know what you're doing and when you're doing it. And you're also letting everyone else know.
Yeah. So let's talk about that, because there's been some interesting things that have happened around that, where, I think one of the ones we talked about, I read about this. There was a person who gave money, like a note came in that said their boss said to pay this money to somebody else. So can you talk about some of those stories? Just give us a couple of more stories.
So, we talk about ransomware and how much money that costs us. The business email compromise, in last year's statistics, I believe it was $1.8 billion in losses for the business email compromise. And what that is basically a criminal inserts themselves into legitimate business transactions. So let's say I have a company and you are one of my suppliers. I send you checks because I need products from you, and I send you checks once a month to cover the products that you send me. Someone inserts themselves into that process, either by hacking or by social engineering. Let's say your purchasing agent goes on vacation and they put it on social media that they're going to be in Cancun and they don't have their phone. The bad guy figures this out, sends an email to me purporting to be from you. Maybe they change one letter of your name, something like that. And they say, hey, I'm in Cancun right now, but I forgot to tell you. Please send all future checks to our new bank. Here's the routing number. Here's the bank account number. Thanks so much. I think it's real. I forward the money to this new bank. And then in about a month, you say, hey, we haven't been paid for the last 5 checks. I wonder what's happening. And you call me and I say, I've been paying you to your new bank. Remember the email you sent me? That is one way of them inserting themselves into 2 companies. They can also insert themselves into one company where they purport to be the CEO, and they send an email to their own purchasing department or their own finance department saying, hey, send $10,000 to XYZ company. We just made a deal with them. Here's their banking information. Here's their routing number. Please send that today by close of business. And people will see that and they'll send it. We had a company here in Houston that told me that they had $1 million, that the CEO told the purchasing person to send $1 million to this new company. And the purchasing person was just about to send it when they thought, you know what, I better go ask him because he's right across the hall. And walked across the hall and said, hey, this $1 million. And he's like, what $1 million? So those are the most common frauds. The FBI, unfortunately, if you lose less than a couple $100,000, you almost won't be able to even open the case because there's so many of these that go on at such a high dollar amount, and we're so overburdened with them. I tell people all the time, you do business over email, but your phone still works.
Double check $1 million payment.
Yeah. 2-factor authentication doesn't just happen for, your bank. It doesn't just happen where someone sends you a code. Another 2-factor authentication is, I got an email saying to change something financially. I'm going to call and verify and speak to someone and make sure that this is what it's supposed to be. I would guess, of the cases that I've seen personally here in Houston, probably 70% of them would have been solved by a phone call to verify what they've got on an email.
I mean, that is such a good point, because I think because we are in this online world, this is actually something I kind of it happened to me too when I first started blogging. It's like you forget that you can actually talk to the people like in a different way. Like, you get used to doing it a certain way, like through DMs or through an email or whatever. And then you forget, like, you just pick up the phone and call them. Wow.
Right.
It
happens. It happens. If my daughter calls me, my first thing I answer with, what's wrong?
Yeah.
If it wasn't something wrong, she probably would have texted me. So,
correct.
You get used to doing business in a certain way. And bad guys, they're very good. We had a company that, their name was fairly long, and they put a J instead of an I in one of the letters, and someone got an email and it looked like it was legitimate. The bad guy didn't have to do much work. He had to do a little bit of research, and he just had to set up an email address with a letter that's one letter off, and it fools people. We tell people in companies, if you can do things visually, if you have a way to make an internal email red or green and an external email red, that's a quick visual clue.
Yes.
And for everyone, I will bet everyone out there has received a call that says that either the IRS wants you or the FBI wants you.
The scam, the IRS scam.
And you look at the number and it says, oh my God, that's the IRS phone number. It must be true. Well, spoofing of phone numbers is so ridiculously easy. You can download in 5 minutes 10 different spoofing tools to make any phone call you make come from any number you want it to. So 2-factor authentication in real life, a phone call to verify it, is the best thing you can do to protect yourself from the business email compromise.
We talked about this in the lead up. Will the FBI send you an email ever?
So the general answer is no. The general answer is the FBI will not send you an email. The FBI will not call you and tell you have an arrest warrant. And most certainly, no government agency in America takes gift cards as payments or anything.
Tell us that story.
So they're people will get hacked and they'll get scammed, and they'll say, the FBI is out to get me. I had to get 10 Apple gift cards and scratch off the numbers and give them to them to make sure that the FBI doesn't come after me. I mean, that is, we hear those stories every day. every day there's someone who's had to buy gift cards to stop some impending bad thing. And if there's one thing I can impart, because these scammers are good, they can fool people. If you get to that point where you're going to buy gift cards, stop and realize you've been scammed. It's not true. I can't say the FBI will never contact you. I've had to push out information to CISOs and heads of companies that we've gotten information that they may be compromised. And I will send an email and I will follow it up with a phone call. And I will always be open to a phone call back.
Like if they say, I don't believe you 100%, like, can we verify? So you can ask to verify.
Absolutely. You can ask to verify. For us here at the FBI, what I always tell them is, hey, call the FBI Houston office and ask for me. So what sometimes I get back is, hey, what's the number? And I say, well, that defeats the purpose. I can't give you the number. You look the number up on your own and find it. Because if I give you the number, any bad guy could do that. So, it's always good to verify. It's always good to check credentials. Every FBI employee is going to have an identification that has their picture on it. Every agent's going to have a badge with that.
And generally, they're going to show up to your door.
Generally, they're going to show up to your door. And if you get a call from the FBI and you don't think it's real and you don't want to verify with the call back, tell them you want to see someone in person. We have offices all over the country. We'll send someone to your door.
If you need one, right? So don't come to my door. But one of the things that I think was interesting about what you just said and what Christina just put up here is that cryptocurrency has become such a big part of this whole thing. We've talked about this several different times throughout. Could you talk about why cryptocurrency has become the currency of choice in this case? Why not, like, I don't know, anything else?
So it's the hardest to track and it's the easiest to send. It is like wiring money. So the way some of these crimes used to happen is some will say a victim will be told to send Western Union to Joe Smith in Eugene, Oregon. And so the victim will send Western Union to Joe Smith in Eugene, Oregon. Then they'll call the police and say, hey, I've been scammed. I sent money to Joe Smith in Eugene, Oregon. Please send the police to Eugene, Oregon to get them. Well, Western Union, you don't have to. When you send money to Western Union, you can pick it up anywhere.
Yeah.
And so cryptocurrency is like the worldwide version of that. Okay. You send cryptocurrency and you're not sending it to a place. You're sending it out into the internet, and someone can, as this goes on and on, it's much easier to convert cryptocurrency to actual currency. So it is the currency of choice of criminals. That doesn't mean it's only the currency of choice of criminals, right? There's, I remember when Bitcoin first came out and it was $1, and I thought, how foolish is that? I didn't think to invest any money in Bitcoin back then.
Like, I should have gotten that $1 Bitcoin.
Sure.
You're so rich right now. And so one of the things I saw the other day, just as a point, is I saw that they're putting together or developing a cryptocurrency vending machine, which will be like an ATM, that's around everywhere. So I kind of think we'll continue to see more and more of this popping up everywhere. So understanding that's what I thought was interesting. I thought the whole point of it was like, blockchain, so you knew where things were and where things were going. So I'm kind of confused why you can't track it.
So blockchain is more of and it's a little bit. There's a very good technical definition of blockchain, but I don't fully understand it. But blockchain is basically a way to verify that the limited quantity of the cryptocurrency that you truly have a part of it. But blockchain is not for tracking that cryptocurrency as it goes to various places. I think as cryptocurrency becomes more mainstream and more used in real life finance, I think we will see a little bit more tighter regulation and maybe some more ability to track it coming down in the future. But the blockchain itself is not a tracking function. It is a function of verifying that it is worth something because there's a limited quantity of it.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting too, because there's so many different types of cryptocurrency. That also leaves the next door open for the next fraud, right?
True. I'm hoping that the tracking of cryptocurrency is going to be regulated like the tracking of wires transfers are regulated, so that any bank you use to make a wire transfer will kind of have to follow the same pathways. And we're hoping that maybe in the future cryptocurrency will be like that. It's right now it's just a big unknown, but it is the absolute number one way that bad guys get payment.
Yeah, it's interesting because I did have somewhat of a thing happen like that. It wasn't for cryptocurrency. They were trying to get me to change some payments that I was making or getting paid by a client over to a credit card, which I think might have been a cryptocurrency type of credit card. Is there those kinds of vehicles now for cryptocurrency?
They're becoming much more mainstream. Absolutely. It used to be cryptocurrency. You stored it on your own device, your own wallet, so to speak, and you had to have your own key. And if you forgot your key, you never got your cryptocurrency.
That's the stories I saw, that people lost millions of dollars because they forgot their password.
Right. So it's now becoming more like a bank, where places like Coinbase and things like that have popped up, where you don't hold your key. They hold your money. You don't have to worry about remembering what your key is. It's more like a bank. You give them money, they hold your currency for you. So it is becoming more regulated. It is becoming more mainstream. I will say that the criminals are almost always either one step ahead or looking to be one step ahead in every new technology to try to find a way to maximize illicit profits. I don't think that's ever going to change. I remember the days of Auto Trader when you'd look for new cars in a book, and so many of those were scams, in the magazine. I think it's the way it is, and we have to kind of address it as we go. And it's like playing whack-a-mole. You knock them down when they pop up, and you never really know when the next one's going to show up.
If they would use all of these amazing, thoughts and ideas for the good, we would all be much better off in the world. But
I think you're right.
Some of them are very smart. It's like, come on, guys, let's do this for the good. That kind of being there, I want you guys to start thinking about questions you might have for Steve. But what I want to, I'm getting scammed. I'm literally getting scam calls as we sit here. It's hilarious. Anyway, so it's that prevalent though. It's so prevalent to do that. So when should we report this stuff, and why should we report it? Because you just said you can't really help us, because if we don't get scammed out of millions of dollars, then we're on the bottom of the list. What's up with that?
So it's for the business email compromise. That's kind of our threshold. We have different thresholds for different offenses. I always say report it. So there's a couple things that kind of happen. If you're the victim of fraud with a credit card, which still happens every day. Sometimes it's a cyber way to get. They still use social media. They still use social engineering. They put your credit cards on the dark web. There's still a cyber nexus to it. But if you report a loss that someone else will be taking, like a credit card company, they often need a police report. The catch-22 is sometimes police departments say this isn't really us, and the FBI says this isn't really us. That's why IC3 is a great tool for reporting all these crimes. It's
I made a cool banner here for you.
Yep. www.ic3.gov. So what that does, it does several things. The first thing it does is it gives you a place to report this, where you get a report number that you can give to whatever investigative authority or whatever financial authority needs that report number to help. Like for credit cards, they want a fraud affidavit filled out, and they want a report number that you've made a report to law enforcement. This covers that. The other thing it does is it aggregates the information. If they start getting report after report about a guy named Bill Torres, who says he's from, Madison, Wisconsin, if you report it to us at the FBI and you lost $1,000, we're not going to open a case on that. But if it turns out 100,000 people have lost $1,000 from this same scheme, from this same bad guy using the same name, that might be something where we do open up a bigger investigation based on the aggregate amount of theft that's gone on. So unfortunately, it sometimes doesn't help you to get your money back, but it does help in the general investigations to stop this. One other thing I will mention for people who are victims of any kind of fraud where it's over $50,000 and the money is being transferred overseas, if it's within 72 hours, the FBI has something called the financial fraud kill chain, which we can stop international transfers of large amounts of money. If you just Google financial fraud kill chain, you will see the reporting requirements of what has to be reported. It's reported to the FBI. It's for larger amounts of theft, but it is something that can be useful to stop transfers before they get out the door.
That's really helpful. And I do think it's important for us to report for that reason. So I think this is great. That's crawling across the bottom of your screen. Make sure you write this down. This is really, really great information. I do want to open this up for some questions. I, have a few more I could ask, of course, but I'd like to know if you guys have any thoughts from your side about what you're worried about or concerned about. And while we have Steve here, because it's a great resource, thank you guys so much for making yourselves available to us today.
Oh, yeah. I would like to say just one other thing that we get a lot of questions on, which is, fake news and misinformation being put out on various platforms on the internet.
Let's do that.
So it's important that people understand that the FBI does not investigate First Amendment protected speech. So whether someone says something that is true or not true, the FBI does not investigate based on that. We have a foreign influence task force, which looks at foreign influence campaigns by foreign hostile governments and intelligence services. And what they do is they try to put out information to counter any bad information that may be put out by these foreign governments. And we will prosecute people who hack or do crimes based on this information. For example, if you go out there and say something patently untrue, the FBI is not going to investigate it. If you hack into 1,000 computers so that they can resend your message that is untrue, that is a crime the FBI will investigate. It's kind of an important thing to put out there, is that I saw something on Facebook that isn't true and I know it's not true. Let me call the FBI. We're not going to investigate that. Our Foreign Influence Task Force has put out a set of videos called Protected Voices. It was geared towards election integrity, but it has a lot of different videos about a lot of different cyber incidents that could be aimed at elections, but also how to get good information, how to be a good consumer. And I'd recommend going to Protected Voices and looking at some of those videos for cyber issues.
That is a really, really good. Protected Voices. And I'm going to do Charles first here. Charles asks, where can a business owner get training to prevent cyber attacks? It's a good question.
That is a very good question. So there's a lot of private companies out there, CrowdStrike and FireEye and Mandiant, things like that do have, they put out bulletins and they put out different kinds of information that would be helpful. As far as training, there's organizations like SANS, which does cyber training. I would say if you have an IT provider, you might want to get with them to find out what they offer. If you have a company that has, that has a relationship with CrowdStrike or FireEye or one of them, they're two good places to go to see what's out there. The problem with cyber training is there's so much of it and there's so many different levels that it's hard to pick what the right course is for your general basic beginner in cyber issues.
I actually have an idea for Charles. So we do a lot of work with the women's business centers in San Antonio, also in Dallas, and they get money from the Small Business Administration. And there's a bunch of organizations, Small Business Administration, organizations in different towns. I know we have them here in Houston. There's also SCORE, which is a another organization that does small business trainings, and they are always looking for good ideas. And so, like, even if they're not giving a training on cybersecurity, you could say, hey, I'd like to have one. I know we got an expert for the Women's Business Center and had that expert come and do like a 6-week training for free for small businesses. So look for small business administration type of funded and also just regular SBA programs in the local area. And I know we have some here in Houston, and I'm pretty sure that they would take requests, we want to get this done. And so then they'd go find your security expert and then teach you. So try that.
The FBI also has InfraGard, which is a FBI private sector partnership for cyber issues.
Mm-hmm. InfraGard, could you say that? Like, what is that?
InfraGard, and I'll have Christine post.
Yeah, Christine's been posting links in the thing. I'm not putting them up here because putting really long links here, you guys would not be able to write them down anyway. And this one's really short.
Yep, this is a cooperation. It's basically an FBI hosts these meetings, and we let the private industry run them, and we get together and there are meetings that talk about current trends in cybersecurity, what businesses are seeing. There are some requirements to be a member. You'd have to be a U.S. citizen. You have to pass a background check. But there's good information that's put out to the InfraGard members, and we have different sectors. Like there's a public health sector that the hospitals will go to, and there's a oil and gas sector within InfraGard, which oil and gas companies can go to these meetings that are usually hosted at a company. Right now hosted online, but it'll soon go back to being hosted at companies, and good information is put out through InfraGard as well.
That's really great. Thank you so much, Christina.
And I would also say, the FBI and CISA, which is the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, do a lot of joint bulletins that talk about current trends. And these bulletins can be very, very technical, and they can be very, very non-technical. It just depends. Mm-hmm. And they're all listed on both CISA and the FBI's websites into looking at what's been happening lately and what we can do about it.
That's awesome. And I'll grab some of that in a minute. So Tracy was asking, and in my job, I see, and I know this is true, a lot of fake Facebook accounts promoting false information. Should they be reported or ignored? And I'm going to go in a bit deeper because she's my employee, so I know what she's talking about. So I'm going to go a little deeper on that and say some of these accounts that we've been finding, they look like they're foreign actor accounts that are trying to stir the pot. And they do a good job of that because they'll stir the pot, and then that'll make those posts be seen by more people who think like that. And then those people that are real people then will come in and be a part of that. But it started by fake accounts.
Absolutely. In fact, there is an incident that happened in Houston, and it's been published in the media, so I'm free to talk about it. Where Russian foreign influencers got a protest at a Houston mosque and a counter protest at a Houston mosque. All of it, real people in Houston who came out, and all of it generated by fake people and bots in Russia. So, those things happen. I would always say, report it. If it's suspicious, report it. The mantra we live by in law enforcement is if you see something, say something. It doesn't mean something immediately might be done or not be done about it, but it's always better to report it. It's always better to say something when you see something, because you never know if your report's going to be the one that made the difference.
Right. I mean, that is such a great point. So yeah, see something, say something. That is such a great mantra. I think that a lot of things would end, but we do also expect, I think, as the general public, for something to be done. And so I do think it's fair for you to say that it's not going to be that something's going to be done, but that it's going to help, like with the research into what are the current trends that are going on. Right? Is that kind of what you're saying to me?
It is, and the more what I'm hoping is that the more that this trend of fake news and false information, the more that people realize that it's happening, the more that they'll be a better consumer, and that they'll be a little bit skeptical, and they'll do their own research, because being skeptical will stop you from being a victim of a crime. If you think, I don't think I should send a gift card, but if no one's ever told you that the government will not take Apple gift cards as a form of payment, you might think that that's legitimate.
Yeah.
The more we report the bad things, the more that might be done about it, or at the very least, it'll generate stories that will trickle out to the media, where we can let people know to be a good consumer. And whether you're on the left or on the right or in the middle, I don't care what your politics are, be a good consumer. Have some, use critical thinking processes to determine, is what I'm being told
true?
legitimate? And if I'm not sure it is, how would I find out better information before I make my decision?
I think ask better questions is a really great mantra. Another mantra. So we have a couple of mantras today. Ask better questions is a good one too, because that's really the thing. Like we just kind of go along with what maybe aligns sort of with what we think, and then don't ask the questions like, is that really true or not?
One of the things,
yeah.
I'm sorry. One of the things we do in the FBI is, and this happens to everybody. There have been times I've been working a case on a bad guy who I think I know this guy did it. All the evidence is leaning towards this guy is doing it. I know he's a bad guy. I think he did it. We still have people who do what we call red team. They take the other side and they think, how could this not be true? Why would this not be true? Our U.S. attorneys provide that function for us and say, we have to prove this is true in court. Don't let our own biases on what we might think be happening affect how we act. And we do that in all our investigations here, and we advise people to do it in their own lives when they get information.
Can you give us some I love this idea of red team. So can you give us a little bit of like some of the questions you might ask, and if you were red teaming, what does that mean for questions?
So red teaming in the cyber world, red teaming is done almost everywhere. Basically, what the red team does is they try to prove that what you're doing isn't true or doesn't work. They're the contrary opinion. In the cyber world, what the red team will do is they will go out there and try to hack your systems and try to break in and try to be the bad guy and see if what you're doing is working. So it's become a common phrase. It's a little more directed in the cyber world, where it's more directed towards ethical hacking and breaking into systems to try to test defenses. In the everyday realm of investigations and in looking at information, we kind of use as the catch-all term to say, look at the other side and see if there aren't things that are going on that might make you change your mind about what's happening and drive your decisions.
Well, I've definitely had enough in my business life where, you're going along and you think you understand something a certain way, and then you learn something. And it's that aha moment, that aha, like, oh, I never thought of it quite that way. And I do think it's really important to understand that we are all looking through a biased lens at everything. Like this is it's how we look at the world, all of us. So I do love the idea of taking the other side. That's really cool. I love it. I've never heard red teaming. It's cool. Cool process. Well, do we have any other questions? I want to find out here. Great info. We're getting a lot of thank yous. Yes, people are catching the replay already. This is good. Great. So if you guys have any other questions, just let me know. We have Steve for just a few more minutes. I'm going to definitely give a few little, a couple announcements while we wait for you to roll your questions in. So number one, we are right now looking for one more judge for the Gift of Guidance program. We are going to be choosing 10 nonprofits that we're going to be assisting in December with their social media strategy for 2022. Cannot believe that we are going into 2022. Crazy. And I'm going to put this up right now while you're at it so that we get there. Yes, follow the FBI Houston. Definitely do that. So we are going to be having a full day conference instead of just a short event. So it's the second Friday in December, which I believe is the 8th off the top of my head. Oh my gosh. I should have put that in front of myself. I don't want to tell you the wrong date. No, it's the 10th. So it's the 10th of December, which is the second Friday, and we're going to have a full day conference. It's going to be $25. to attend, but you also are going to build your social media strategy. That's the difference of the gift of guidance this year. We're going to spend the first part of the day building your strategy with some amazing, really amazing speakers. And also you're going to actually be doing the work. So it's like a workshop all the way through. And in the afternoon, we're going to be helping the 10 nonprofits that we choose. So I do need one more judge to help with that. You would do that from your own home. It's like the 25th, I think, through the 29th of this month. And you would just read through, and we have a Google form where you'd fill it out. It's pretty well put together. It'll take, a couple of hours, like 6 hours or so, maybe 6 of your, maybe less of your time. So let me know if you can do that over a week's period. And that is what we're looking for now. And then also we are going to be putting out in a couple of days the actual event. So I hope you will join us for it. It's a very exciting event. We will be doing it on Zoom this year because of COVID and all that. But in the evening, we're going to have a live event. So we're going to have a live event at a venue. So for those of you who'd like to get together and kind of do a mixer at the end, we'll do that. So just know that that is coming. We have an amazing group of people that are going to be helping with that this year. And I will put out a list of all of them. I don't want to miss one right now, but I will pull it up right now so I can read them all off, because I do know who they are, but I do not want to accidentally forget. So that's coming up. So let me know if you are available for that. We have one more social media breakfast like this for the year. I can't believe we're kind of coming to the end of the year here. So yes, I love the gift of guidance too, Sandra. It's really an amazing opportunity in Houston to help others out. We are heading into our 10th year of the gift of guidance, so it's crazy. But we've been doing this for 10 years, and yeah, it's been great. So let's see. I almost had it. Let me get there. I'm almost there, guys. I want to tell you who it is. So we have Caitlin from Black Sheep, who's helping us with the nonprofits. We have Gabe, who's helping us with promotion. Vanessa is helping with volunteers. And Sarah's helping with sponsorships, Sarah Shaw. And then we have Rebecca Council, who's going to be running the tech for the day, which will be sizable. So that's huge. We're also looking for sponsors because, again, we're doing this very differently this year. So definitely let me know if you might be interested in sponsoring the event. And that's all for those announcements. If you have any other questions, I don't see them. So I just want to thank our guest today, Steve, so much for being here. Definitely, we want to make sure that you guys follow the FBI in Houston. Again, Christina runs the Twitter account and the Facebook page out there, and it is a very good resource. Lots of really great information on those resources. So definitely go and follow them right now as a thank you for Steve's time with us today. So thank you so much for being here. Is there any parting words you have for us?
Yeah, thank you for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to reach out. If you see something, say something isn't just platitudes. The FBI gets 90% of its information that we use to put bad guys in jail from people in the public who call us and tell us things. There's not a huge, the TV has this image of us using all these supercomputers and these unbelievable investigative techniques.
I heard about the Stingray this week.
Right, which, things out there, there are things like that out there that we do use, but quite frankly, someone calling us and telling us something they saw or something they heard is how we get most of our information and how we solve most of our cases. So, if you see something, say something. And once again, thanks for having me. And, think cybersecurity, think cyber safety, and look at everything with a jaded eye when it comes to money.
Yeah, do not send your money to people, and do not buy people gift cards that
we do
can
not
contact you on the email.
Yes.
Don't do that. Don't do that. Yes. All right. No, it's been really great. I mean, I got a lot out of this because I think there's just so much that we don't realize we have to kind of handle as a small business. So kind of wrapping it up, also getting your backups on your computer is so important. And I know we put it off, but just doing it, even if you think you're not like, I don't have a network, I'm not big, I'm not this, but just think about, can you do without the information that's on your computer? Even if it's in the cloud, because they can go through your computer into the cloud and get your information. And like they could literally go into the cloud, take your stuff off of it, and then how would you get it back? So I think this is really, really important. So thank you so much, Steve, for like opening our eyes just a little bit more. And yeah, be safe, be happy out there, and come back next month for Social Media Breakfast. We have a great guest that we're working on right now. We had one cancel, so I'm working right now with a new one. So I don't want to quite give it away yet, but it's going to be good. It's going to be, I think, about our psychology and how we think. So talk about biases and stuff. She'll probably be able to handle that and how we can work on that with our marketing. So it's going to be very exciting. Thank you, Steve, so much for being here. And we will talk to you guys next month.